There are days when I quietly look around and realize I am still here, still breathing, still eating 3 meals a day, still moving through the mornings, afternoons, and evenings of life. Yet strangely, it feels as if I am slowly becoming invisible within the very life I once belonged to. No one is intentionally hurting me. No one is being cold or pushing me away. Life simply moves forward, the current flowing gently ahead, while I seem to stand on the sidelines, quietly watching as if I were a guest passing through my own story. In the past, every morning when I woke up, I knew someone was waiting for me. There were colleagues who needed my experience, children waiting for the meals I prepared, loved ones looking to me for advice on life's many turns. I was once at the center of so many circles of love and responsibility. Now I still open my eyes each morning, but no one needs to wake me up. No one waits for breakfast. There are no reports requiring my approval. The house has grown strangely quiet. The phone rings less often. The gatherings become fewer. The conversations no longer need me to bridge them. They still love me, I know that. But everyone has their own rhythms now, their own busyness. And I have slowly stepped out of those rhythms, standing quietly on the edge. There are days when I quietly ask myself, am I truly living or merely existing? Do I still have meaning when no one seems to need me anymore? And yet, it was in those moments of uncertainty that a new healing journey quietly began. A journey not to seek anyone else, but to gently return to myself. Back when I was still working every morning, began with a clear sense of purpose. There were meetings, waiting tasks that needed to be done, colleagues who turned to me for guidance, younger co-workers seeking my advice. Each day I was needed. I was part of something, a steady rhythm where my presence and decisions mattered. That responsibility, though sometimes heavy, quietly brought me joy. Then came retirement and everything slowed down. I still woke up early out of habit. But now there were no calls from colleagues, no emails needing my reply, no decisions waiting on my desk. The house felt quieter, a kind of unfamiliar quiet. The phone, once constantly buzzing, now mostly lit up with promotional messages or the occasional check-in from family. No more texts saying, "Can you take a look at this for me?" or "Mom, can I get your advice?" I slowly realized that I was no longer the person people reached out to as they once did. The love was still there. The respect remained. But everyone had started to move into their own orbits, their own rhythms and concerns. And I stood outside of those rhythms, like a small, quiet star on the edge of a vast sky. Sometimes sitting at the family dinner table, I would simply listen as everyone chatted, children discussing their work, grandchildren sharing stories from school. I wanted to join in to add a thought, but often hesitated, not wanting to interrupt, unsure if my words still fit into the world they now inhabited. It's a very particular feeling. No one is pushing you away. No one is shutting you out. And yet, there's an emptiness, as if you're present, but no longer at the center of any circle. Little by little, the silence stretched wider and lasted longer. In the past, whenever someone faced a challenge, they would turn to me. They sought my advice on work matters, asked for my thoughts on raising children, or consulted me on important decisions in life. I was someone they trusted, someone they came to for guidance and reassurance. But now those conversations have slowly faded. My children have grown, they have their own thoughts, their own ways of making choices. They no longer need to ask for my opinion as often. Sometimes I listen as they discuss and decide things together completely without needing my voice. At family dinners, I still sit among them, but most of the time I simply listen. They share stories about their work, their friends, their children, and I find myself unsure of when or how to join in. At times I think of adding a small comment, but hold back, sensing that the conversation has drifted into spaces I no longer fully understand. Often I sit quietly and wonder I am here. But if I weren't, would anything really be different? It's not exactly loneliness. It feels more like a quiet pause within life's melody, a kind of empty space gently forming inside me. I am present, yet no longer at the center of any circle. And so these little gaps began to grow slowly, silently within my heart. For a while I used to wonder, have I been forgotten? Have they stopped caring about me? Those quiet questions slipped into my mind and at times made my heart feel heavy. But slowly during those long, silent afternoons, a gentle truth began to reveal itself. The feeling of being forgotten, was not because anyone was careless or unloving. It's simply that every generation walks its own path, carries its own burdens, and faces its own challenges. My children are now busy building their careers, raising their families, and securing the future for the next generation. The stage of life they are in, I have already passed through, and it is not because I am useless. In the years behind me, I fulfilled my roles. I gave, I built, I supported. What needed to be done, I have already done with all my heart. And like a chapter that naturally reaches its ending, my role gently closed, not from neglect, but because its purpose was complete. The invisibility I had felt for so long, it wasn't something others had placed upon me. It came quietly from within, from the fear of no longer being needed, from years of being called upon, consulted, and relied upon. When those calls stopped, an emptiness grew inside me, and I mistook it for being forgotten. Only when I sat with it, honestly facing my own heart, did I finally begin to accept. This silence is not abandonment. It is simply a transition, a pause after a long journey inviting me to step into a new chapter one, where I learned to be with myself without needing anyone's call or reminder to feel my worth. For much of my life, I was used to being needed. My worth was often tied to what I could offer, solve, or support for others. But now, as the quiet settled around me, I realized I was facing something I had never truly learned before: how to simply be with myself. I began to sit with the feeling not as an enemy to be fought, but as a companion I needed to understand. There were moments when the emptiness felt sharp, like a quiet ache beneath my ribs. The absence of voices calling my name, the stillness of a phone that no longer rang for advice, the long stretches of days without anyone seeking my opinion, it all created a strange hollow inside me. But instead of running from it, I allowed it to stay. I listened. I breathed through it. I acknowledged its presence. "This is what it feels like to no longer be needed," I whispered to myself. And then, almost like a soft question carried on the wind, I asked, if no one needs me right now, can I learn to need myself? Can I learn to sit with my own company, not because I have something to do or fix, but simply because I am here? It was not easy at first. My mind, so long trained to serve, to care for others, to anticipate needs, struggled with the stillness. But slowly I began to shift. I wasn't trying to replace being needed with some new duty. Instead, I was learning something quieter, something softer, how to simply care for my own soul. To sit in the morning light and feel gratitude for breath. To rest my hand on my chest and remind myself, you are here, and that is enough. For the first time in many years, I was not striving to matter to others. I was gently beginning to matter to myself. I didn't try to fill the emptiness with grand changes or big projects. Instead, I began with the smallest of things, quiet gestures of care that gently brought me back to myself. I tended to a few small plants. Watching them grow leaf by leaf reminded me that life continues in tiny, steady steps. Every drop of water, every bit of sunlight felt like a shared breath between me and the quiet world around me. I started writing down little stories from my life, moments I had never told anyone. Memories once tucked away now found their place on the page. Some stories made me smile. Others made my eyes well up. But in all of them, I found pieces of myself I had almost forgotten. I opened old drawers, sifted through worn photographs and letters dusted off corners of my past. As I held each faded picture, I smiled softly, not with regret, but with gratitude for the life I had lived. I practiced smiling at strangers on the street, a simple nod, a gentle hello, as if to say, we are both still here. And that in itself is something beautiful. And on some mornings, I would sit quietly sipping tea under the soft light of the rising sun. In those moments, I didn't need anything more. I simply whispered to myself, thank you for another day. Thank you for still being here. It was through these small, almost invisible acts that peace slowly returned, not as something to be achieved, but as something quietly grown, moment by moment, breath by breath. For so many years, I believed that my worth was tied to how much others needed me. The more I was called upon, the more useful I felt. The more problems I could solve, the more valuable I thought I was. It was as if being needed validated my place in the world. Without those needs, I feared I would simply fade unnoticed, unimportant. But now, in these quiet days of reflection, I've come to see something I never fully understood before. My existence holds meaning even when no one calls my name. My presence matters even when no one seeks my advice. I don't have to be essential to someone else's life in order to belong to this world. I matter because I am here, because I breathe, because within me there is still a quiet pulse of life, a gentle peace that doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. For the first time, I have learned to find value not in what I give to others, but simply in being present, being alive, being at peace with myself. This understanding didn't arrive suddenly. It unfolded slowly like a sunrise that quietly brightens the sky, reminding me that light can return without noise, without anyone watching, simply because it is meant to be. I no longer need to be seen every day. I no longer seek to be at the center of someone else's world to feel whole. The constant need for recognition has quietly loosened its grip on my heart. What I need now is much simpler and far more peaceful. I need to be present with myself each day, to sit quietly with my own breath, to wake up in the morning and greet myself with kindness, to carry gratitude in my heart for the simple gift of being here. There is a gentle freedom in no longer striving to matter to others, a quiet joy in simply mattering to myself. Sometimes peace is not about being important in someone else's world. It's about being gentle with your own soul. And as I walk through these days with less noise, with fewer demands, I find that the deepest kind of healing is not found in what I accomplish, but in how tenderly I hold my own spirit. Life, after all, is not measured by how many people need you, but by how fully you can sit with yourself and softly whisper, "I am enough. I am still here, and I am grateful."